those who have joined from Canada. I know it's quite early in the morning, so I really appreciate your joining us in this early hours. And welcome to this virtual launch of book being written by Dr. Jagrati Gangopadhyay, which is titled as Culture Contests in Aging of Elder Indians, Narratives from India and Beyond. She is Assistant Professor and Faculty Coordinator at Center for Women's Studies, Manipal Center for Humanities, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, India. We are going to have, have actually with us a very impressive line of speakers and form of a panel, and we are going to have a conversation with them about this newly launched book, which is with support from Shastri Institute's publication grant. Those who are aware of Shastri Institute would be knowing that it's a binational organization mandated by both the countries, both the governments, Government of India through Ministry of Education and Global Affairs Canada from Government of Canada's side. We are working on this binational corridor for last 50 plus years. 2018 was our Golden Jubilee year. And we have facilitated and assisted the mutual understanding between these two countries, which have a lot of common interest to share. So this is the brief of Shastri Institute. I certainly recommend you, if you haven't heard about us or if you want to know more, please visit our website and get to know what we do, how we do, and what we can offer to you in terms of your collaboration and partnership with the Canadian or Indian universities and institutions. It's an impressive network of 170 institutions in India and Canada. You name a good institution and institution of repute, you will find it in our network. It's a binational network of institutions that is being facilitated and nurtured by Shastri Institute in terms of promoting collaboration amongst academia and research fraternity. We have a lot of programs that assist scholars in building knowledge and enrichment about each other. And the areas are quite diversified, I would say, from humanities and social sciences to STEM, to developmental studies, to art, culture, ethnic studies, or you say First Nation studies. We are into everything. We certainly encourage you to visit our website and get to know more about Shastri Institute's activities and new initiatives that are in line for 2022. Coming back to this book launch, I would say there are quite a variety of cultural issues worldwide that impact aging issues, from perception to its evaluation in terms of the elderly, to homelessness, caregiving, assisted medical support, or medical and mental issues in terms of mental health and physical support or psychological support. And also the responses to those with different kind of challenges, physical or mental challenges. Anti-aging is also one of the discourses that I have seen or witnessed in last couple of years coming up very well in terms of discussions that have been taking place in this stream. This is, to me, is a multidisciplinary area of research that crosses majors from sociology to anthropology to psychology to variety nursing or medicine. So I really appreciate that Dr. Gangopadhyay has come up with this extent of dimensions that she has covered in her writing, in her book. So congratulations, Dr. Jagrati Gangopadhyay, for coming up with this publication. I formally congratulate you on behalf of the Institute, as this is a publication out of the Shastri Publication Grant. We take equal pride in your publication and share it with the august community that we have on this binational corridor between India and Canada.
Say a few words about her book. Thank you. I would like to begin by thanking Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute for all the support and for organizing this launch. It is a huge moment for me. I'm immensely grateful. I'm also very grateful to all the panelists. I have cited all your work. I've read your work, and I have actually, for particularly, I have used your work and I've read your work for a very long time, ever since I became a scholar of gerontology. So this is, I think, by the way, Dr. Kaul is back. So should I stop or should I continue?
No, please carry on, Jagrati. I'm really sorry for this happening here. Kids are watching movie and things are in different. Yeah, so it's like bandwidth being shared with everyone. Apologize for that. Please go on. It's lovely to hear you, Dr. Bandyopadhyay. So please carry on your commentary.
Thank you. Also, this book is, I wanted to write, particularly do a comparison because it is, if you've gone to the book or the chapters, it's very extensive. I've drawn from different cities in India, as well as it's a comparison with Canada, because since everybody, all panelists more or less are particularly scholars of gerontology, you all would be familiar that scholarship wise there was a dearth in comparative studies in like India and other countries. So I'm of course also influenced by the works of Dr. Sarah Lamb, who's a scholar based in the US. And so I thought in continuation with that, Canada particularly seemed like a very a country which I could compare with, particularly Saskatoon, because I received also a lot of support from University of Saskatchewan, and that is where I also met Professor Parkinson, who really helped me a lot with my data collection there. And because it's also a big challenge to do field work in different settings, particularly in a transnational setting. And I was new, I was young, and I one doesn't really know. So I also, in addition to theory and data, I also really wanted to contribute and expand intellectual scholarship on fieldwork and methodology, which are some of the gaps in scholarship in sociology and gerontology, because I am particularly a scholar of sociology. So this I also got interested in aging because in India generally has generally is identified still as a very young country, and the problems of the old, like policy wise, also generally are ignored. So I started doing research. Primarily it was a comparison between Ahmedabad, India, and Saskatoon, Canada, and then I expanded to other cities as well, like Delhi, Kolkata, and Jamshedpur, which was my hometown. And I also wanted to situate the book in different living arrangements, like joint family, old age homes, institutional settings, living alone. So, and also in a transnational context, particularly to show and highlight how context and different cultural practices play a very key role in shaping aging experiences. Because when I, as a scholar of gerontology, when I started reading the scholarship, and what I've also gathered from what most scholars of gerontology have said and argued, is that aging usually is viewed as a very homogeneous process. There are certain stereotypes that are identified with aging, for example, frailty, dependency, particularly in the Indian context. Then weakness, physical weakness, mental weakness, dependence on children. However, I of course myself also have aging parents, and so I know that how nuanced the process of aging is. And one aspect that is often ignored is the aspect of gender. So I wanted to look at family. I also wanted to look at non-family settings and bring out all these different comparisons in my book. Similarly, Canada actually is a very, very interesting site of study because, of course, one of my biggest grievances would be that I couldn't really interview any Canadians when I was in Canada to really understand, or grasp the process of aging, and you like do a comparison between Canadians and Indian Canadians, because of course the entire belt of North America is also very situated with successful aging and productive aging, and that one has to always remain active. There are also certain connotations that are associated with particularly in America, North American side of aging. So, but Canada actually really opened up very really interesting insights. And one of the biggest points I wanted to highlight in this book is that how I've of course drawn from various theoretical models, but my main aim was to demonstrate that while there is of course no one process of aging, and aging is a very cultural process, it is also important to understand that it cannot be categorized under different theory, like under two major theoretical models either. Like the two theoretical models are, of course, disengagement theory and the successful aging theory. And it is important to understand the various the the layers that are involved in the everyday processes of aging. In addition to looking at subjective experiences of aging and growing old, I also do look at intergenerational relationships. And I also did get the opportunity to interview the adult generation as well. And I think I was very fortunate because I really wanted to understand their perspective as well, like because in now the caregiving arrangements are changing so much, institutional settings, or the market, there are so many opportunities, like particularly wide caregiving arrangements. So what do adult children think, and what do adult children, like what were their perceptions? And one of the most important findings I think I came across was that adult children really still want to take care of their older parents, like irrespective of whether they are in India or Canada, because now there is so much of writing against, the middle generation thinking about their needs and individualization. But I actually found that there is still the huge that they really want to provide caregiving arrangements for their parents. But however, because of multiple circumstances, and they do feel sandwiched, but like between their children and their parents, and it is also a very difficult navigation for them. And of course, the other major difference between India and Canada was the state support, because Canada, of course, does have like official policies, and state support is huge, which was not there so much in India. And also, if you've noticed, my book is very urban and really situated among the financially stable class of elderly. It was a conscious choice I made because rural elderly, I believe, has like certain amount of research done by very eminent scholars, and the contribution was huge. Also, policy wise, there is at least some thought put towards rural elderly, but there is also a gap for urban elderly because it is kind of assumed or expected that they are financially stable and sufficient, but they do have other major problems, which is why I also really went beyond this idea of physical and living arrangements and financial arrangements. I wanted to look at the other emotional and cultural issues that older people face in different settings and in different contexts. Hence, I also have brought out other socio-demographic factors like class, like the Delhi chapter, class plays a very, like, social media influence, particularly now, has become very important in shaping aging experiences. So I wanted to talk about those aspects as well. And by this, I really want to start a dialogue of comparative studies, in particularly with regards to aging, because I think the field will really benefit because the more comparative studies, of course, like, and this is of course about aging experiences, but also about different experiences of deaths and dying rituals, because those are also like one of the most important things. A lot of Indian Canadians who have actually grown old in Canada mentioned that how they often yearn to go back to India just to die. So, how deaths, when it features, the homeland still matters. I, of course, couldn't really flesh out so much data on that because I was asking different questions about more about experiences of aging and intergenerational relationships. But I think there's definitely much more scope for research. And in my policy chapter, as I've mentioned, that both countries can actually learn a lot from each other, particularly policy wise. And I think more such, like this is just a starting point, and more research needs to be done to expand this comparative nature of scholarship. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gangopadhyay, for your dialogue here on the book of yours. It's a great contribution to the research that is being done on this, not just on this binational corridor, I would say, worldwide on aging. It's certainly going to be a much referred work because it's a data-based analysis that you have presented, which is the empirical research is very difficult to find. And if you have gone through and taken trouble to meet people, and it's not just the data that is in numbers that reflects, it's also the analysis of emotions that you have encountered during this interaction of yours. So wonderful to bring this out, and congratulations on behalf of Shastri Institute. As I said earlier, we have a wonderful panel with us today for this launch. This includes, formally, I would like to introduce them, and this is Professor Elaine who's Associate Professor, Practice and Public Policy, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Professor David Parkinson, Professor Emeritus, University of Saskatchewan. Dr. Mala Kapoor Shankar Das, former Professor at University of Delhi. Dr. S. Sivaraju, Professor and Chairperson, Center for Excellence in CSR, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Bombay. I would formally welcome them and would like to proceed further to hear their perspectives. Before that, I would certainly like to present our audience the book in its physical form. And I think it's, if it is possible for Jagriti also to show the book, how it looks. Here it is. And yeah, big round of applause for Jagriti. Yeah, so thank you so much. And with this, I think we can begin and invite our speakers today. To begin with, I would like to have Professor David Parkinson. He's a Professor Emeritus, as I said, at University of Saskatchewan. Dr. Parkinson, you have your time. We would like to hear your commentary on the book, and beyond that as well, whatever you can cover for us. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Prachi. I really appreciate this opportunity. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Absolutely,
all
sir.
right?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
That's very good. So I'm here to pay tribute to Dr. Gangopadhyay's individual achievement, but I want to try to set that achievement a little bit in the community from which it has arisen, from which she has been able to really find her footing and find her way forward in her research and now in this wonderful publication. I'm not an expert in the field, so my comments are necessarily rather impressionistic and rather personal, and I hope that everybody will be all right with that. At least you know that I will be as quick as possible. So I want to think very much before I begin my comments about the pivotal role of the Shastri Institute, because here we have a book which is a portrait, but it contains some very powerful advice to policymakers, advice to caregivers, and I think it contains some very powerful insights for all of us who sooner or later are going through the aging process, and our relationships are changing with the people around us and the people closest to us. So this is a very wise book, and it can be a very powerful book. So my thanks, my praise to Shastri for identifying the importance of this book and providing the support that has made its publication possible. Thank you, Dr. Kaul, and your colleagues. So we're already thinking about the community out of which the research has arisen and is having its effects. I need to think back to 2014, and I need to think about the close connections that were developing at that time between the University of Saskatchewan, my academic home, and IIT Gandhinagar, which is where Dr. Gangapajai was then studying. So the connections were really formed, in my thinking, by three key people. At IIT Gandhinagar, that would be, at that time, Dr. Tanishta Samanta, who, of course, was Dr. Jagriti's supervisor at that institute. But especially at my home institution, I want to think about two people, Professor Lisa Vargo and Professor Raj Srinivasan. Without these people, I would not be here on this panel. So they are my community. These are the two people who have advised me, who have encouraged me, really every step of the way. And they are really the leaders at the University of Saskatchewan when it comes to engagement with India, particularly in the social sciences, in postgraduate research generally, and in the humanities. And beyond that, in STEM. So two people that are really sort of stitched into the narrative that I want to be referring to. Professor Vargo in terms of supporting the summer institutes at IIT Gandhinagar, Professor Srinivasan in supporting the student exchanges that have taken place, and also really adding so much expertise to the summer and winter institutes that have connected the two universities so closely together. So my comments now need to be perhaps a little lighter hearted and a little bit more personal. So I want to think about Jagriti Gangapajai in Saskatoon for just a moment. This is where you need to imagine all manner of funny slides which capture very personal and interesting moments. I don't have those pictures handy, so you'll just have to rely on my words. On behalf of the university, we found very, very nice housing for Jagriti. Way off at the other end of a big field, brand new building, all shiny, all new things. And after a day or so, Jagriti sort of took me aside and quietly said, "Do you think I could be somewhere where there are a few actual people?" It turned out that she was the first and only person to live in this residence. And it was much better for her to be in the midst of the academic community, in the midst of the neighborhood, because that's how her research needed to take place. So right away, I learned something important, that this was a researcher who needed to be amongst people in order to live her life, in order to conduct her research, not off in splendid isolation. And I learned as well very soon that Jagriti is a courageous person who really sort of dived into the connections that she needed to make in order to conduct her research. And perhaps a key moment which demonstrated her courage most wonderfully to me and to my wife Heather was when she was greeted at the door of one respondent by a very, very large dog. And she just had to walk towards the dog and hope that she wouldn't get gobbled up. And it turned out that this dog had a very amazing name. It was called Honey Bunny. And she just made friends with the dog and had a great interview with the people. So Jagrati was in Saskatoon during the summer, and summer is an intense time because it's short. It's a time when people really get together. It's a time when different cultural communities can encounter one another with some greater ease and greater celebration than is possible maybe at other times of year. So it was really wonderful that Jagrati was able to make the connections through the farmers market, which is really a multicultural mosaic in Canadian style, where you go from stall to stall. You really are going from culture to culture. And Jagrati made some extremely important connections there. She made some extremely important connections at the Saskatoon Folk Fest, which again is a multicultural celebration with pavilions for the different cultures. And I remember going with her to the northeast of the city into a great big building where several pavilions were located, among them the Indian Pavilion. And she just immediately made the connections that were important for her to carry out her research. So here we've got a researcher who is keen-eyed, who is deeply humane, who is deeply interested in locating the human condition in particular cultural and generational circumstances. It really was a privilege to meet her, to have the chance to support her work. And since that summer of her research in Saskatoon, Dr. Gangapajai and I, and others, including Professor Vargo, have continued to work together on student online research conferences at which students from Manipal Center for Humanities have really featured very, very much. We've had over 30 students from Manipal Center for Humanities participate with distinction in the world-class day that Dr. Gangapajai has been a really, really important part in the development of. So I want to end my comments by paying tribute to the book, by paying tribute to its author, Culture, Context, and Aging of Older Canadians, Narratives from India and Beyond. But I want to pay tribute to the Shastri Institute for supporting the publications of such scholarly books, but also the maintenance and the growth of these academic relations, which lead to such wonderful results for further generations of students. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parkinson, for sharing your observations. Very personal, but very important to set the pitch and give us a background how the whole thing started, the whole concept started. And I certainly would like to acknowledge the support that we have received from the people who really worked out on this collaboration between University of Saskatchewan and IIT Gandhinagar. Of course, Dr. Jan, Sudhir Jan, who was the director, he has moved on now recently. But at the end of University of Saskatchewan, of course, Lisa and Dr. Srinivasan were a great source of inspiration to take it forward. And of course, you were humble enough not to mention your name. I would say that you were instrumental quite a bit in building this relation, initiating this relation, and the concept of, as I earlier also mentioned about digital humanities at IIT Gandhinagar. Thank you so very much, and also for providing our insights of your experience with our scholar there and the facilitation that you have provided. Wonderful listening to you. Thank you so much. And I really am sure that our engagement will go on further. And Shastri, as a facilitator, will try to provide whatever support we can provide to further strengthen these ties amongst the academic institutions across the board. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite Professor Shiva Raju. He's from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Sir, we are really looking forward to hear from you on this book and on other perspectives ranging from your area. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaul, for inviting me. And it's a great privilege for me to be here in the midst of August gathering, and also to share some of my views on this volume. First of all, let me congratulate the Institute, because when we see the outcome, this is a outcome of the whole process. The scholar has, so this outcome is very significant, and also it reflects on at the international level how the elderly's situations in different contexts, how it has been described by the author, is really highly appreciable from the Institute point of view, because you have identified correctly not only the major theme which the scholar has taken, and strengthening through your institute resources and these things. I think I congratulate you for this, and also I wish you all the best for such emerging issues should be the priority, which I am sure you will be doing it in future. And Dr. Jagrati, I was really amazed to see the volume and reading with great interest. And though I have started during the last 3 years, getting a positive framework of the advantage of the elderly in their midst. So it is a mix of the way in which these elderly are located and their quality of life. So that is one important. Other important aspect which you have contributed in this volume is that most of the studies and most of the volumes that are published so far have focused only on elderly per se. What is the other side? What about the co-residents? What about the young generation? So you have filled that gap where you have depicted when the elderly are in their midst, what are their perceptions, what are the ways they are feeling in the, in taking care of them, and also to, the intergenerational, that bond that exists between them. The other important aspect which you have also covered, like in the Parsi elderly study, which I have done, a similar study like this, what you have attempted is that besides community-based elderly, you have also focused on institutionalized elderly, which is very, very essential, given some of the, like Jamshedpur you have covered, and a residential home. So their issues, how depict, like that. In Canadian context, which you have focused by taking the Indian diaspora, especially when they have moved in the younger at the young age, and last 3 to 4 decades when they settled there, how their issues are there, to what extent. As you rightly pointed out, the financial aspect, though it has been taken care of, the emotional, the intergenerational, lacking time, interacting with the young generation, and also feeling that at the tail end, when they come towards nearness to their death, how they feel of coming back to India, these are very, very important. So with a very good qualitative analysis, very truly reflecting on their living conditions, the volume has a major contribution in the field of social gerontology. So I congratulate you. Another important aspect which with great interest I read was your field experiences. When you interacted in the field setting, the way in which from the gender lens, from the age lens, how you faced some of the dilemmas and what are the issues that, because for the future researchers, this becomes a very important learning experience for them. So as a researcher, you filled that gap, which is very important, because we take it for granted and write and study is completed. But you have gone through and depicted the way in which the your experiences as a researcher, that is very important for us. There are so many issues which you can, of course, in the future volumes, I'm sure you can depict, because the narratives from India and beyond, maybe very clearly this is focusing with Canada, but you can say at the end, you have also touched upon China, Japan, Singapore, and some of the other countries, which requires an in-depth analysis from those who settled from India and went from India. And that is a very important. So I congratulate you for choosing this field and also contributing at this age. And I'm sure many more such volumes and which many such contributions we can look forward from you. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Professor Raju, for giving us scholarly perspective of the book, and the nuances that you have highlighted are very, very important for all of us to understand, especially for those who have not gone through the book yet, and they will soon be having that opportunity, and giving them the ideas what all is being covered by Dr. Jagriti in this publication, and making them interested to go by themselves what all it covers. So thank you so much for your for highlighting those nuances to the audience and to all of us. Thank you so much. With this, I move on to invite Professor Elaine P. Ugargol, who's Associate Professor of Practice and Public Policy at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, India. And we would like to have your perspective, sir, in terms of the current policies in the area, of course, reflecting upon the book, but otherwise as well in terms of what more need to be done in this area to make aging something that is not dreadful, or something that not everyone would like to get into. So over to you, sir. We are looking forward to hear you now. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely happy to be here, Dr. Prachi. And so thank you for inviting me. I'd like to congratulate Dr. Jagriti to start with on this wonderful book that has come out. And of course, it's very important to recognize the institution as well. So hearty congratulations to the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute for having supporting such an invigorating research, something which is very important, something which is primarily important to showcase an example of across continents about how aging process actually unfolds across different areas. And it's been a very interesting book to actually go through. And I'm very happy to sort of congratulate Dr. Jagriti on her choice of context as well, because she's chosen very interesting context, very different scenarios that depict the social milieu of that place. She's very nicely put forth how different classes, how socioeconomic divisions, how living arrangements, and all of these contribute in different way in helping the intergenerational care sort of contract, as we say. After researching a few spots in India with regard to immigration context, my personal experiences with doing research in the states of Kerala and Goa have also given us a lot of inputs about how the qualitative focus can actually unearth a lot more complexity. Because survey data can often guide, it can often indirectly help us to choose the focus of a study, but when you actually get into the field and you do the qualitative inquiry, the vastness of mixed methods, the approach of mixed methods is going to be heavily contributing to us. And as we see in this classic book, you see the context of how the sort of wealthy businessmen of Ahmedabad had a different story with respect to aging, how the elderly wanted to hold on to their assets, how the mother-in-laws were so happy to hold the power of the household and were not willing to give it to their daughter-in-law, for example. So these are very classic cases we see in India. Then she actually moves forth into institutional care. She talks about the Jamshedpur angle, where she talks about people who have opted into an old age home. She also reflects so nicely about how people would actually think about what happened to the filial contact. Yeah, so what happened to my adult child who was supposed to be taking care of me? So in that breakage, in that kind of a severance of the intergenerational contract, or you may be saying appropriating in such a way that the person is arranged you to be in an institutional care setting. How does that play out? What sort of emotions, what sort of feelings, perceptions guide older adults in these institutional cares? It's absolutely important. Then we look at the case of how people living across borders. We see this transnational sort of case with regard to transnational families who originated from India and are now staying in Canada. We see that vast exploration of how they still want to be felt and still want to be part of the culture of India. They want to have the same sort of things. They would want to come back when they're old. I mean, all of these are very interesting aspects that this book actually unfolds. One characteristic feature of this book is that it has provided us so many contexts and so many different ways to study the elderly, which is an important contribution, I can say. Hats off to the supervisors of Dr. Jagriti and the people who've been guiding her on this, because it's quite difficult to make note of so many different contexts, different angles of exploration, different questionnaires, different in-depth interview guides to get into these sort of pockets of information, to unearth so much that is important for us. She then actually moves across to Calcutta. She talks through us about how the loss of spouse can itself be a very important indicator, right? I mean, if you look at the BKPA study, which actually came out in 2011, we then had the Lassie Wave 1. We've been looking at various angles where living arrangements, how the impact of loss of spouse, how the impact of not having a proper social security system in India, how we see depletion in terms of focus towards elderly. India still largely has a maternal and sort of child health focus, and we fail to recognize that nearly 10% of our population is already old. So as this population segment keeps moving upwards, the contribution of this book is going to be kind of magnanimous, actually. So it's quite interesting how she deals with the intergenerational play of things. She talks about culture. She uses various sort of theories, starting from the social constructivist theory. She talks about the exchange phenomena, how reciprocity itself can actually guide the international care contract. We also see examples of Bourdieu's example with regard to social capital and how a person who is wealthy, who can move into an old age home, or who can even get a home care aid for himself, how that sort of group of elderly can actually differentiate from the others, actually. So these are classic sort of cases. Each one is a case study in itself. And I would actually encourage Dr. Jagriti to sort of take forth these explorations into further explorations, because these are very important. Each context, each exploration of a mixed method study for the elderly actually gains so many different insights that it's very important that we can use this to influence policy as well. So the policy is basically framed from what we unearth. And of course, large sort of survey data is going to guide us in that direction. But when you actually get into the households, when you speak to people, when you realize their sentiments, their feelings, their perceptions, that's when you actually are able to say confidently that this is actually what's happening here. And although, with regard to qualitative studies being often overlooked, saying that, okay, it can be a very local context, it can have a very low applicability in terms of research, but the deepened thoughts, the perception that actually come out from these expressions are quite vast. And I'd like to, so once again, congratulate Dr. Jagriti on this book and encourage her to actually sort of go further in this regard. With that, I'd like to end my talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lalin, for your observations and especially sharing about, talking about the methods being adopted for doing the research, which are very, very important. And this represents the ideal way of conducting research for the younger lot of researchers that those who are in make. So for them to understand the importance of both kind of data being analyzed and clubbed and expressed in a manner that it makes all the more sense to represent and to reflect whatever is being observed by the scholar. So thank you so much for being here today with us and for your time that you have contributed. With that note, I would like to go on further and invite the last speaker of today's panel, that is Dr. Mala Kapoor Shankar Das. She is a professor. She was a professor. She was teaching at the University of Delhi, a retired professor, but highly engaged in academic fraternity. Welcome you, Malaji, and over to you for your reflections.
Thank you very much, respected chair, fellow panelists, and dear participants. Good evening and good morning to wherever it refers to your time zone. At the outset, I want to thank Dr. Prachi Kaul, Director at the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, for inviting me to this book launch event. My appreciation also goes to Ms. Vicky Sharma, the Program Officer at the Institute, for coordinating the program. I'm happy to be amidst a distinguished panel, fellow panelists, Professor David Parkinson, for whom I have heard, but did not have the opportunity to meet earlier, Professor Shivaraju, who is a friend and colleague since last many years, and Professor Ellen, whom again I haven't met before. I'm extremely pleased to see Dr. Jagrati bloom into a social gerontologist and becoming an author of this very interesting, readable book, Culture, Context, and Aging of Older Indians, Narratives from India and Beyond. I've known Jagrati now for a few years, and it is good to see her grow from a young researcher to be an established professional as the assistant professor at the prestigious institute, the Maypal Academy of Higher Education. She's made a name for herself, not only in the field of family sociology, but also in the upcoming discipline of social gerontology. She has contributed a chapter to one of my recently published book on aging issues, and is also now a contributor to a chapter in one of my forthcoming books titled Care of Older Persons, International Perspectives, Various Country Experiences, Challenges, and Responses. I am impressed with her writings about her understanding of aging concerns and her perceptions of older people's thoughts and experiences. She reflects well on them, and her sharing of these comes out quite lucidly in her articles and with the publication of this book, which is very sensitively titled as it is in terms of the cultural context. The emphasis here in her recently published book on culture within the context of aging and the way it defines the experience of growing old, as well as of later years of Indian adults, is linked very sensitively, not only as a sociologist, but also as a social gerontologist. Her work, which adopts a socio-cultural lens and highlights emotional, social, and psychological issues of the older adults in urban India, makes a significant contribution to the field of aging studies, in my opinion, not only in India, but also in the framework of Asian region, as we see various similarities with regard to aging issues in these countries, to which Jagrati does refer to a bit. Thus, I note in the book a global tone which is welcome. Further, I would like to state that although Jagrati's emphasis in this book publication is on urban India, but a lot of what she shares through her writing can speak for the rural context too, though I know she has shied away from bringing in this comparison. I understand her reasons, but what is important for me, for instance, is the way that she links the different cultural practices existent in the urban areas of the country. And I think these are meaningful in the rural context too, as all these factors play an integral part in determining the course of aging. So while a few readers may view this publication as being specific and to some extent narrow, with its focus on the urban component and to economically well-placed older people, however, to me, this book contribution speaks more than what it claims to cover. The connections made between culture and the context of aging is valid for any geographical focus. And herein lies the strength of the book as being a good methodological tool for understanding aging process in a country and in a cross-national perspective. The intersections between emotional, social, and psychological issues of the older adults understood through the socio-cultural lens is a meaningful contribution to the literature on aging in the country. And as I said before, for this Asian region too, though Jagrati talks more about Canada, and for that matter, for older Indians settled in any country, and especially where the diaspora is active, such as also USA and UK besides Canada. The specialization of social gerontology is a growing field where the sociology of family is more established discipline. Yet, as a sociologist, I find that family studies are only in recent times opening to the experience of aging and how it affects intergenerational relations, the interactions between aging spouses, and how those without families, being single for whatever reason, adjust to society and find their place as they go through the stage of adulthood to growing old. Cutting across these different discourses from the fields of sociology on family and aging studies, in my opinion, is the use of the gender lens by Jagrati, which portrays a remarkable dimension to understanding the full experience of aging. Jagrati, with acute awareness, brings forth the impact of gender on different relationships being defined by the aging process in India, be it in the family setting or in the elder care institutions or in a particular geographical setting and within a specific country context. Can the in-depth observations made by Jagrati in the various chapters of the book lead us, the experts, policymakers, or researchers, or for that matter, the older people who could also be part of the readership of this book, to any useful direction in improving the position of older people in society, is a question which comes to mind regarding the meaning of any publication. I'm glad to comment as an expert that this aspect of practicality of any work for the wider society is to my satisfaction taken care of in the last chapter of this methodologically and analytically rich volume. The concluding part of the book places the subject matter in the context of policy implications of this work, which I would say is a good mix of theoretical and empirical inclinations, very beneficial part of any research work. And Jagrati needs to be congratulated in bringing out this marriage between two frameworks, which are quite often not easy to match, but in contemporary times necessary for the growth of any discipline, in this case for gerontology, along with sociology of family. I'm sure you would all agree with me that our own budding author this evening has successfully made a mark with this publication, and I hope she takes these intellectual inclinations to further heights. Lastly, I do want to say that Springer, the publisher of this book, has done a good job, and I feel they will be able to market this publication successfully. Springer has been my publisher of 8 recent books on aging, and I'm happy with their process and delivery of contents to a wider audience. Jagrati, I wish you the best with the sale of your contribution. And lastly, I would like to congratulate Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute for supporting this project. Thank you all for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shankar Das, for your commentary here and explaining in detail the chapter-wise representation of facts and the analysis that our author has presented in her book. I really appreciate your going through the whole book so carefully and sharing your insights, and also not just that, but also encouraging our author to go on further with her deliberations and intellectual pursuit. So thank you so much for being here with us today and providing your insights on the book published by Dr. Bandyopadhyay. Thank you once again. With this, I think we are done with the panel speaking, but I think we have good 5 minutes time. So if all panelists agree, if there are some questions from the audience, maybe we can take a few. Piki, if you can do that. And also, I would like to acknowledge at this point the presence of and participation of Professor Ratna Ghosh. She was the past president of Shastri Institute. She comes from McGill University, Canada, and a very long associate and friend of Shastri Institute, who has contributed immensely in the building of the institute, constructively in the time when institute was still growing and nurturing its horizons. So thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for being here. I am not sure if it is possible for giving her an opportunity to speak here, but certainly we can have a couple of questions from her side. Vicky, can you take it over now?
Sure, Prachi. I do see the hand raised from Miss Lisa Vargo. So, Miss
Okay.
Lisa, if you don't mind, could you please type your question under Q&A window so that we can read it out here? So maybe we might just have to wait for the question to get popped up.
Okay. In the meantime, do you have any other question?
Not at the moment, Prachi.
Okay. In the meantime, I certainly like to apologize for the technical glitches that we have encountered today in this session. I feel embarrassed, but sometimes you have no control over these things, and this is one of those days, I think. So please bear with us, and apologies.
I do see Dr. Ratna Ghosh as well. So
Okay.
if Dr. Ghosh can hear me, then probably she can type her question as well.
I saw her here a while back, and I think, yeah.
Can we unmute for a while? I mean, the
Yeah.
person who wants to ask a question.
Dr. Ghosh, I have unmuted you, so maybe you can read out your question.
Thank you very much for asking me to ask a question. I'm having problems with the connection. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Ghosh, very well.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much. I really wanted to make a general comment that
Sure.
I think that this is a very good thing that Prachi has been able to do, and it's a very opening with this particular publication is a very good thing because it's an excellent, it sounds like an excellent publication. I don't know when I will get the book and if I will get the book, but I would really very much like to get the book. After hearing from Jagriti Gangopadhyay herself about what she has done with the book, and also by the panelists, it sounds like a wonderful book. So my congratulations to the Shastri Institute for having done this, and to Dr. Gangopadhyay for having this at a very crucial time, and particularly in Canada, where the pandemic has shown that the elderly have suffered the most. So I think it should be a book that the Canadian policymakers should look at also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thanks.
Ghosh. Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, Dr. Ghosh. It was lovely having you here. Very encouraging for all of us, and we will try to see that you get to read the book very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe you can, Vicky, you can similarly invite Lisa to ask her question if you can.
Sure, Prachi. I think Lisa had typed her comments in the Q&A. So if you allow, I can read it out that as well.
Okay, all right.
Actually, it isn't a question. It's, congratulating Dr. Jagriti and something that she has written for her.
Okay, go on.
Dr. Jagriti, this is for you from Miss Lisa Vargo. She is saying, I just wanted to congratulate Dr. Jagriti and say how much I have enjoyed this presentation and how nice to see Dr. Prachi again. I look forward to reading the book and wanted to say how a recent article in The Guardian about a woman in Kerala learning to read at the age of 104 So that is something she wanted to say to Dr. Jagriti. No other questions, just greetings and congratulations from her.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's really nice to have these comments. We certainly looking forward to, having next immediate opportunity to meet all of you in person sometime very soon, whenever you visit or I visit your place. Looking forward to that opportunity, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah,
Jagriti,
Professor
would you like to
John would
reflect
also
upon?
wanted to ask a question. His hand was raised earlier. We may also ask him if you want to say something.
Sorry, who's that? Reshma?
Professor John Arwood.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, I do see him here. I'm unmuting him. But I think he's on mute. Dr. Wood, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great,
Oh.
sir. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I'm sorry. It's 5 o'clock in the morning in Vancouver, so I'm not very
Yes.
much awake.
Too early for you,
But I've enjoyed the seminar very much, and congratulate Dr. Jagriti very much for what she has done. I hope we can get this book in Canada before too long.
Sure, Dr. Wood, it is so lovely. Came true. I am sure you are doing very well health-wise and emotionally as well. I never expected you to show up on this occasion, but it's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate.
Well, you have to understand, I'm an old Ahmedabadi myself, and
Yeah.
I've gone through the stages of being in my 30s in Shastri, and now I'm in my 80s. So I've seen practically half a century of Shastri organization. I remind you, Prachi, that we met 17 years ago during the CHARP program, and that was a very successful getting together of Indians and Canadians also, and it's brought back a lot of memories to me. But anyway, I am very much looking forward to reading this book, especially because I'm getting into the riper years, and very interested to see the Indian-Canadian comparison. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Wood. Yeah, it is an honor to have you here. And for everyone, he also served as a resident director as well as a president of the Institute, I think in different capacities thrice. And he visited India when he was a young boy, and that never discontinued till he could come physically. So thank you so much for your presence today, Dr. Wood. I really appreciate.
Good.
Dr. Koala, I have another question coming from Bhavika Thakkar. May I read that from the chat box?
Yeah, maybe this can be the last one if there are not.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, there aren't any more. This is probably the last one.
Wonderful.
So, Dr. Jagriti, for you, congratulations, Dr. Jagriti. My question to you is with regard to your suggestion regarding most important aspects and areas that should be addressed for further research in the field of social gerontology. So maybe you can throw some light on this question.
Yes, just before that, I'd just like to thank Dr. Lisa, Dr. Ghosh, and Dr. Wood for their messages. It was very touching, and thank you very much. It's a huge honor for me. Addressing this question, this is a vast field and there is so much to do. Of course, I meant in terms of comparative studies, and now I think with the pandemic, I myself, of course, am doing like an all India study on the intersections between the pandemic and how the experiences of the elderly were, in different parts of India, particularly because they kind of course, had different sets of challenges. But also, as elderly population would expand, their problems also would actually be very different. So by in that sense, I meant that to look at increasing generational gap, then grandparenting, also how like with increase in life expectancy now we have different categories, right? Like old, older, old, like oldest, old, like how different experiences of aging are very different within, like 60 to 90 in itself is a very broad age group. So, the comparison between these age groups also. So these could be potential areas of further research. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jagrati. Dr. Kaul, I don't think so we have any more questions, so maybe you can move to the next section, vote of thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vicky, for moderating this.
Thank you.
This was wonderful session, I would say, and we get to hear the observations and commentary from our panelists, and also we could take a couple of questions from the audience as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I formally thank all of you, the whole panel, and of course to Dr. The author itself, because it is her initiative and it is her effort that has actually actualized this particular event. So thank you so much for being here today. I thank Ms. Vicky Sharma, the Facilitation and Communication Officer, also Ms. Reshma Ranavarma, who's the Program Officer concerned, who has worked out the details very well, for your efforts in placing this forward and organizing this event flawlessly. There were some technical issues that we have overcome very soon, but I think it was a great session, and I think I'm very happy to say that there's a long way that we have to go further, and Jagrati ji is going to take other initiatives, and we are here to support you, Jagrati ji, to take it forward in any ways possible with the support of the Institute and other institutions involved in the process. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you all the audience who have joined us in early morning hours and the late evening hours. So once again, keep connecting with us for such events. It's a mutual enrichment that we get out of these events for sure. So once again, thank you and take care, everyone. Good night and have a great day further.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.